My family cut me off, so I quietly built the life they said I never would. They didn't disown me with loud words. They just erased me quietly. One day, I was family. The next, a ghost in the group chat. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. But instead of breaking down, I started building. Brick by silent brick. And now, they watch my name show up in places they never expected. Speech balloon, have you ever been pushed out by the people who were supposed to protect you? Stick around, because what I built in their silence became louder than their absence. Yellow Circle Part 1, the moment they let go of me. They cut me off, so I cut a new path. I still remember the exact sentence. Maybe it's time you figure things out like an adult. It wasn't said with cruelty. No yelling, no slamming doors. Just calm dismissal. Like I was a failed project they'd quietly shelve. My name is Nina Rhodes, 23 years old. Broke. Exhausted. Recently laid off and 3 months behind on rent. All I needed was a little help. A bridge. A little grace. Instead, I got silence. Then, maybe this is a lesson for you. And at that moment, something inside me clicked. I wasn't angry. I was done. See, it's one thing to be rejected by strangers. That stings. But to be rejected by the people who once clapped at your kindergarten recital? That cuts differently. They didn't see potential. They saw a failure. I wasn't the golden child. I was the one who took the creative route and still hadn't figured things out. So I packed my bags. Not with shame. But with quiet, serious determination. I moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment that had more cracks than square feet. I didn't have a bed frame, just a mattress on the floor. A folding table became my office. A chipped mug became my daily reminder. You've got this. Even if no one claps for you right now. Speech balloon, have you ever had to walk away from the people who were supposed to lift you up, just so you could finally rise? Drop a like in the comments if you chose yourself, even when no one else did. Now don't get me wrong, those first weeks. Brutal. I cried into cheap takeout. I questioned myself more than once. But here's the thing no one tells you. Rock bottom is solid. You can build from there. And so, I did. At night, while others posted family dinners and vacations, I was teaching myself new skills on borrowed Wi-Fi. Digital design. Freelance project tools. And slowly, a little light started to come through the cracks. Not because someone handed me a flashlight. But because I became my own spark. I didn't need them to believe in me. I needed to believe in me. And maybe that's what choosing yourself actually looks like. Not a grand exit. But a quiet promise made on a mattress floor with tears still drying on your face. Link that first night alone, I made a vow. They could cut me off. But they would never again define the limits of my future. Because if they weren't going to build with me, then I'd build it myself. Brick by stubborn, scrappy brick. And that was the beginning of everything. Speech balloon, let me ask you, what was the moment that finally pushed you forward? Not out of anger, but out of clarity. Share it below. You never know who you'll inspire with your story. Bell, and if this feels familiar, if you've ever had to prove to yourself that you were worth the risk, don't scroll away. Like, subscribe, and stay with me here at NA Family Story. This journey is just getting started. Next up. The day I turned my side hustle into my lifeline. Part 2, my blueprint began with nothing. I didn't have a safety net. So I became my own ladder. Let me paint you a picture. A cracked window, a humming fan, a second-hand laptop that wheezed every time I opened a Chrome tab. That was my startup kit. No co-founder. No office. No funding. Just Wi-Fi, willpower, and YouTube tutorials at 2 a.m. But you know what? That little corner of mine, that folding table, that beat-up chair, it became my launch pad. I started with freelance gigs. Copywriting. Social captions. Branding help for small businesses run by women like me, scrappy, passionate, and ignored by the big agencies. No savings. No backup plan. Just cold emails and warm determination. And then one day, I got a reply. A skincare brand. Women-owned. Just starting out. They needed help creating their voice online. My pitch wasn't fancy. But it was honest. 2 Zoom calls later, I signed my first $500 contract. Let me tell you something, I cried. Not because it was a lot of money. But because it meant someone believed in me. Speech balloon, what was your first real win? That moment you felt seen, not as someone who was trying, but someone who was building. Drop it in the comments. I want to cheer for you the way no one clapped for me back then. That $500 didn't just pay my internet bill. It rewired something in me. I wasn't just getting by. I was growing. And soon, word started to spread. 1 client turned into 3. 3 turned into 10. I started crafting brand strategies for women who were making handmade candles, running online boutiques, building coaching programs from their kitchen tables. And for the first time in a long time, I felt useful. I felt powerful. I wasn't just freelancing. I was building a foundation. Not for the version of me they had cut off. But for the woman I was becoming. I still remember a night I sat on my apartment floor, my back against the wall, laptop balanced on my knees, and I whispered to myself. Maybe this is what freedom feels like. Not loud. Not flashy. Just steady. Earned. Mine. Speech balloon, have you ever built something out of nothing, even when no one was watching? Tell me below. Let's build each other up in this space. That's what any family story is all about. And then, something unexpected landed in my inbox. An email. A much bigger brand. National reach. Women-led. They said, "We've seen your work. We'd love to talk." At first, I thought it was spam. But it wasn't. It was the opportunity that changed everything. Coming up in part 3, I'll tell you exactly how I went from folding chairs to Fortune 500 calls. But for now, let's stay right here, in this beautiful moment between struggle and breakthrough. Because you know what I've learned. Sometimes, your blueprint begins in the quiet. Not with applause. But with one decision. To build anyway. Bell, if this part of the story hit home for you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to NA Family Story. Every story we share here is another brick in someone's comeback. See you in the next part, friend. We're just getting started. Yellow Circle Part 3, they heard my name, in a meeting they weren't invited to. The first time they said my name with pride. I wasn't even in the room. 3 years had passed since I launched my digital marketing company, Ripple and Rise. 3 years since the silence from my family became louder than words. They didn't ask how I was doing. Didn't check in. Didn't celebrate the small wins, the late nights, or the way I learned to rebuild from scratch. But here's the thing about growth. It doesn't wait for applause. It just keeps rising. One Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed. A text from my cousin. We hadn't spoken in forever. She worked in marketing for a mid-size retail brand. We used to share memes. Now, just silence. The text said, "Are you the founder of Ripple and Rise?" I blinked. And then I laughed, softly, to myself. Apparently, my company's name had come up in her team's pitch meeting. They were exploring new agencies to help rebrand. Ripple and Rise was on the shortlist. My cousin had sat quietly in the corner of that meeting until the name was spoken. Until the deck on the screen pulled up our logo, my logo. That same cousin once told me, "Maybe you should get a real job." Now, she was texting me like she was meeting a celebrity. I wrote back, "Yes, I am." No emojis. No shade. Just the truth. Speech balloon. Have you ever had someone who once doubted you suddenly try to reconnect after you made it? What did you say? How did you feel? Drop it in the comments. Let's share those full circle moments. Here's what surprised me. She didn't follow up with an apology. "No, I'm proud of you." Just silence again. And you know what? I didn't need more than that. Because when you've built peace inside yourself, external validation just feels like background noise. More texts trickled in over the next few weeks. A former classmate who once laughed at my Etsy attempts, now asking if I offered mentorship. A cousin who ghosted my birthday for 5 years, now hoping to catch up and grab coffee. But I didn't feel bitter. I felt grounded. Rooted in something stronger than approval. Progress. Speech balloon. Have you felt that shift too? When you're no longer chasing recognition, because you've already given yourself the credit you deserve. I'd love to hear about that moment. Type, "I claimed it," if you felt that power. Of course, I thought that was the arc. That the story would end with quiet triumph. That being quietly seen, finally respected, was the resolution I didn't know I needed. But life had other plans. Because just when I thought it was all behind me, my father showed up. Unannounced. Uninvited. At my company's community workshop. He stood in the back of the room, arms crossed, watching me lead a team of local entrepreneurs through branding strategies. Watching me speak with clarity, confidence, and heart. I hadn't seen him in years. And now he was standing there, where I'd planted roots he never helped water. Link in part 4, I'll tell you exactly what he said when we finally locked eyes across that room. But let me ask you this first. Speech balloon. If someone who once made you feel small walked back into your life years later, would you open the door, or close it gently? Let me know in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Bell. And if this part moved you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to NA Family Story. Because around here, we turn quiet victories into stories worth telling. See you in the next part. Part 4, I sat at the table, but this time, at the head. They used to joke that I talked too much. Now they sit quietly, while I hold the mic. Let me take you to that moment. The chairs were neatly arranged. The stage lights were warm but steady. It was the biggest community business event of the year. And I was the keynote speaker. Not the intern. Not the assistant. Not the girl with a hobby. But the woman who had built a thriving business from a second-hand laptop and stubborn resilience. As I stepped up to the podium, I took a deep breath. And then I saw them. Back row, slightly off-center. My mother. My cousin. Even my uncle, who once said I'd never make it without connections. They weren't there because I invited them. They were there because one of the event sponsors, whom I had helped launch 2 years ago, thought it'd be a nice surprise. And it was. But not in the way you might think. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about witnessing who I'd become, when I no longer needed them to see it. Have you ever achieved something so deeply meaningful that it no longer needed to be validated out loud? Tell me about it in the comments. I want to celebrate the quiet power with you. I started my talk the way I always do. With the truth. I told the audience about my first $500 client. About the late nights, the tears, the figuring it out phase. About the pain of being cut off, and the beauty of discovering who I was without their permission. But here's the part that mattered most. I didn't speak from bitterness. I spoke from fullness. From a life I built brick by brick, word by word, day by imperfect day. Afterward, as I stepped down from the stage, my mother approached me. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. But in the way someone carries themselves when they realize they misjudged something precious. "We didn't know you were doing all this," she said softly. I smiled, genuinely, kindly. "You weren't supposed to. Because some journeys aren't meant to be broadcasted. They're meant to be lived." She didn't say sorry. And I didn't need her to. Because that day, I wasn't the girl hoping to be seen. I was the woman who had learned to see herself. Speech balloons. So tell me, what does success look like when no one's watching but you? Not the highlight reel. The quiet moments. The cup of coffee you earned. The boundaries you set. The peace you protected. Share it in the comments with a sparkles if you've ever stood tall in your own truth. And here's something else I've learned. Sitting at the table means more when you've built the chair yourself. When you've sanded every splinter. When you've carried it through the storm. When you've pulled it up not to take space, but to finally take your place. Lincoln now. It may sound like the end. But trust me. This is just where it begins again. Because when the dust settles, and the applause fades, and the stage lights dim, what truly matters is not who clapped. It's who you became while no one was watching. They thought cutting me off would break me. But all it did was free me. In the quiet, I discovered strength. In the stillness, I planted seeds. And in the life they thought I couldn't build, I bloomed. Speech balloon. Have you ever been left behind, only to rise on your own terms? I'd love to hear your story, because your voice matters here. Belle, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to NA Family Story, where every quiet beginning leads to something powerful.